Hi, Coach Sean here. If you hear my little dog in the background snoring, please excuse. If you're new, welcome. If you've been here a while, you already know what this space is about. We talk about narcissism, dysfunctional family dynamics, and what it really takes to rebuild your life when you've been emotionally dismantled. Right now, I'm doing a series on parental alienation. I like to just have truth, clarity, and a path forward. I want to tell you a little bit about me. I married my narcissistic husband in 1998. He's covert and malignant. I knew something was off early on, but I didn't have the language for it. He never cuddled. He didn't know how to kiss. Lovemaking was non-existent. It was about satisfying him, and that was it. There was no warmth, no tenderness, no emotional safety. And you can live inside that for years. I kept telling myself, maybe this is just marriage. It's not. It was emotional starvation. And while I was starving emotionally, I was over-functioning everywhere else. I was taking care of 2 sets of twins. I was running a home. I was trying to earn money. We were buying and selling homes, decorating, making real estate our best investment. We made a lot of money in real estate in those years because the market was good. And I'm smart with money. I'm smart with strategy. I can see value. I can see the long game. We invested in a house down on 30A. We do not have that house anymore because he couldn't see the value, or better yet, he needed to criticize me for wanting to purchase it, and that property has done phenomenally well. That tells you everything you need to know, even when I was right, even when the numbers were right, even when the instincts were right, he still needed to cut me down. Nothing I ever did was enough. He criticized everything. That's what they do. They don't build, they don't protect, they don't appreciate, they criticize, they drain, they diminish. Now listen closely because I want to shift the way you see your story. The woman I am today would never put up with the man that he is. She would never marry a man like that. She would see the clues immediately. She would see the lack of warmth, the lack of intimacy, the entitlement, the constant criticism, the emotional emptiness. She would see it and she would run. A woman of caliber would never date a man like that. And this is the part I want every woman watching to hear, especially if you're sitting there thinking you've been replaced. You've not been replaced. That is simply not true. These men do not upgrade. They go down. They marry down. Because women who have integrity and standards are not going to sign up for a man who was married for decades and blew up his family without digging for truth. That is a red flag right there. He destroyed something he should have protected. He betrayed what he was supposed to honor. And a quality woman is not going to get her hands dirty with a man like that. And I'm going to tell you exactly how a woman of caliber thinks. They think I would never marry a man who was married for a long period of time without knowing explicitly what happened. I would not take his word for it. I would not want to know his own story. I would want to know hands down. She would want to know hands down what happened. She would want to know facts, not a sob story, not, oh, my ex was terrible and I suffered for decades, because that is not factually true. Men do not typically suffer for decades like women. They leave. So if a woman is stepping into a story thinking, oh, this poor guy suffered for decades, she's believing a narrative, not reality. I would also look at the kids. If the kids are doing well, it's because she carried it. She held it together. She built the stability, especially if the man traveled. Women who stay at home, we run the family. So if he built his career, which is what he should have been doing, if he was working, you were building a family. Doesn't take much to figure that out, does it? And if he's downing her, there's a lot of questions there, isn't there? If you're dating a man who traveled, who benefited from a woman holding the whole system together, and now he's selling a victim story, do the math. A woman of caliber doesn't ignore patterns, she investigates them. So why is it so difficult for narcissistic men in their 50s and 60s to get quality women after they've blown up a long-term marriage? Because we women, smart women, who don't mind being single, who don't need to attach, and who dig for truth can see them. We can see the lack of integrity. We can see the trail. We can see the selfishness. We can see the entitlement. We can see the inability to take accountability. We can see it, and we are not signing up for it. We are not gambling our lives on a man who proved he will betray what he was supposed to protect. So what do other women do who want a man like that? They don't ask questions. And what do these men do? They settle. And settle is what they do. They end up with women willing to accept less than a real commitment, women willing to live with them and not be married, women willing to be engaged forever, women willing to accept sloppy engagements, women willing to put their name on a mortgage without being married, women willing to build a life with no protection, no covenant, and no clarity because they're desperate to be chosen. Now, some of these men run out and get married right away. Again, red flag. Some man wants to marry you right away. He doesn't even know you. Now, if you are so broken that you think, oh, I'm so amazing, I'm so beautiful, he just has to have me. Okay, reality is marriages are more about substance, not just what you look like, not just what he thinks he knows about you in the first few months or you know about him. So again, that is not healthy. I can see the desperateness though. I can see the brokenness. I'm saying this because I recognize it. I see myself in these women when I was young, 30 years ago. I see a version of me that didn't value herself enough yet. I see someone willing to accept scraps and call it love. That is brokenness. That is not love. And here's the deeper layer. I did not grow up in a stable home. None of us did if we picked men like that. My mother never valued me. I could never do enough to please her. So when my husband didn't value me, it felt normal. Familiar pain feels like home when it's all we know. That's how people stay. They don't stay because they're weak. They stay because their nervous system recognizes a pattern, and they call it love. The abuse was undeniably horrific, and I didn't even realize what it was while I was living it. None of us did. I thought it was all me, and at the end, I truly thought I had destroyed my family and my marriage. I had 3 suicide attempts because I believed I was the sole problem and I couldn't find relief. That was the kind of psychological erosion that emotional abuse does to someone. It corners your mind until the only thing you crave is an exit from the pain. Then real help entered my life and everything started to make sense. One of the best things that happened to me was going to rehab. I needed trauma-informed care, and I spoke with incredible therapists and psychiatrists who helped me understand what happened to me. That was eye-opening. Because once you can name it, you can stop blaming yourself for it. You stop taking responsibility for someone else's cruelty. But the devastation didn't stop with him, because my children became an extension of his cruelty. My boys were abusive. My daughters were cruel. I've talked to other parents who have been recorded. Recordings handed over, police video handed over, wrongful accusations, wrongful charges called in. Things that should never happen inside a family done by children who become extensions of the narcissist. They become just as abusive. And yes, I question whether my children are narcissists, whether all of these are children are narcissists too. I don't know how you could do those things to your mother and sleep at night, but apparently I can. I could never have done that to my mother. Even if my father had been very wealthy, and I'm talking millions, I would have lived in a cardboard box on the street before I would have aligned with an abuser, because standing up for what is right matters. Aligning with an abuser is a moral choice. And I know what I would have chosen. And I want to say something about this broader culture too, because I've looked at it long enough to know it isn't just my kids. A lot of privilege creates adults who cannot tolerate discomfort. They don't understand sacrifice. They don't understand loyalty. God forbid a toe gets banged and it all becomes chaos. We grew up in a different time. We grew up with Superman, the original the original ones. We grew up with Family Ties. We grew up with Little House on the Prairie. We grew up with the Waltons. We grew up with stories where doing what was right mattered. Now everything is about what's best for me. How do I look? How much money can I make? It's shallow and it has consequences. My children are educated, doctors and attorneys, and I would rather they were mechanics and social workers, and there's nothing wrong with those jobs, but I'm saying I'd rather they were good people with good hearts. I would rather them have character than credentials. I would rather them have a conscience, because a title without a conscience is worthless. They have disappointed me beyond words. So here's what I want you to take from this. Do not ever let anyone take away what is due to you. When you work hard, you should be complimented for that. It should not be a competition between you and your partner. You should not have to beg to be valued. And if you're watching videos of men who truly love their wives and it makes your chest ache, you're not dramatic. You're recognizing what you were deprived of. As mothers, we wonder what we could have done differently. But at the end of the day, we survived. I survived. You survived. We survived a brutal attack from someone without empathy, emotionally stunted and cruel. And that speaks for itself. Now the hardest part, our children. We want them back. We want the magic sentence. We want the magic text. We want the magic button. There isn't one. We don't know what's going to become of them. We don't know how they're going to treat their spouse. We don't know how they're going to parent. One day their children will grow up and ask questions about grandma and grandpa. And reality is hard to dismiss forever, especially when you are no longer an alcoholic or mentally unstable. The label they tried to stamp on you. I would love for my kids to one day read all the psychiatry and psychology records, because truth matters. But I cannot force grown children to wake up, and neither can you. Now we focus on us. We find the road back to ourselves, the road back to what should have already been given to us in childhood. The tools to navigate life where we are valued, where we put ourselves first in a healthy way. Putting yourself first is the oxygen mask. You put it on yourself first so you can breathe, because you cannot save anyone while suffocating. If you're suffocating with rumination and regret, some of that is normal. Some of that is healthy. It ensures you don't repeat the same mistake, but there comes a point when you stop slapping yourself. You did the best you could under the circumstances. You fought to survive. There is a reason you are still here. You still have a life to live. You still have a right to be happy, and you have the right to stop punishing yourself. You were being human in an inhumane situation. You accept responsibility where it belongs. You ask yourself forgiveness where it's appropriate. You learn, you move on. And that is more growth than the narcissist will ever do. And that is more growth than many alienated adult children will ever do. If you need help breaking the trauma bond or navigating parental alienation, I have guides for both. I also offer one-on-one Zoom sessions worldwide. I'm putting my Stand Store link in the description so you can grab the guides or book a session.